Karen Reed is accused of killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, in January of 2022. The prosecution alleges that she struck him with her vehicle and left him to die in the snow. But Reed's defense team argues that she was framed in a police cover-up. I know it sounded crazy to me at first, but just listen, guys, because we are in round 2. The first trial ended in a hung jury in 2024, leading to the retrial in 2025. But Reed's defense team says that the jurors were only hung on the lesser of the 3 charges and had agreed on not guilty on 2 of them, a claim that the prosecution highly denies. If you have not seen my previous videos on this case, feel free to check them out because there are quite a few of them. There is a new prosecutor on the case, Hank Brennan, and he fought like hell to keep Arca out, guys. Of course, they're absolutely horrible because they damaged the state's entire theory. Karen Reed has also had 2 new lawyers join her defense team. The first is Robert Alessi, who is a forensic data expert as well, which is extremely important in this case. The second is a woman named Victoria George, who was actually a juror in the first trial. Reed has also spoken publicly about the case in interviews, which is actually being used against her this time. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. She should have zipped it. The defense has also produced new forensic analysis challenging the prosecution's timeline, which they keep moving, by the way. I can't even tell you how many times John O'Keefe's time of death has changed. Auntie Bev even allowed Shannon Burgess, one of the state's star forensic analysis witnesses, to change his report and timeline halfway through the second trial after listening to testimony of Ian Whiffen. Whiffen is another one of the state's data experts. So what the hell? See, they're realizing none of what they're saying makes sense and they keep changing it. But Alessi absolutely destroyed Burgess in cross-examination, specifically pointing out the fact that he had lied about his credentials. Burgess also claimed that he changed his report on his own terms, but that was pointed out to be a lie when the defense cross-examined him and pointed out a reply that he had made to Hank Brennan in an email. The email started off as, "Dear Mr. Brennan, pursuant to your request." And that is exactly what Alessi read to him. So Brennan is just a freaking liar, and I get disgusting, slimy vibes when I watch him. I mean, Lally was annoying, but Brennan seems like a bad man. We also have yet to see testimony from Brian Higgins and Brian Albert. Brian Albert was actually the homeowner of the property that John O'Keefe was found deceased on. Higgins was also somebody who was at the house that night and had been at the waterfall with all of them earlier that day. Brian Higgins is also the same one that was texting Karen Reed, and those texts came out again in this trial, but they had had a little text exchange. And it did appear that Brian Higgins had been texting her the night of John O'Keefe's death and seemed a little upset that she was not responding to him. Not to mention, both Higgins and Albert destroyed their cell phones after getting a heads up that they were about to receive a court order to keep those phones. Not only did they destroy their phones, Higgins specifically ripped the SIM card out of his phone, smashed it, then smashed his phone, and then drove to a military base and discarded them in separate dumpsters across the frickin' base from each other. That is extremely, extremely sketchy to go to that length. Like, you're covering up something huge, possibly killing somebody. And that is probably exactly why they haven't been called, and it doesn't look like they are going to be called, because they are not good for the state. Now let's talk about Alan Jackson versus Jen McCabe round 2, because if you could believe it, it actually got worse. Because the FBI investigation into the cops is now closed, they are able to bring in some new evidence, and it doesn't look good for Jenny. Jackson grilled Jen McCabe on the fact that she lied to the FBI when she was approached outside her home and asked if she was Jen McCabe. She told them that she was Nicole Albert and claimed she did that because she didn't know who these men were, and okay, fair enough. But then when she was contacted by them and asked if she was willing to speak, she agreed but asked to give her 10 minutes. Jackson also pointed out that she lied to the FBI knowing it was a crime, claiming she made 0 phone calls in the 10 minutes before they arrived. But that was a lie. She had made a phone call to Carrie Roberts and Matt McCabe, which she called and admitted to later. She also attempted to call Brian Albert and Nicole Albert, which she still denied. And when Jackson asked her if it was a lie, she said no. So he said, "Is it the truth?" And she said no. So, holy smokes, this lady is insanely manipulative. When Jackson asked Jen McCabe why she made those phone calls, she admitted it was to see if they had already talked to the FBI, because she wanted to make sure that her story matched. But she ended up only speaking with them for a few minutes before kicking them out of her home and asking to speak with an attorney. You know who also got an attorney right away? Brian Higgins. Now let's talk about the aggressive dog, Chloe. This is the dog that the Alberts owned and that people believe that these marks on John O'Keefe's arm are from. The defense believes that they got rid of that dog, and real quick, because when Jen McCabe went in the next morning to her sister's home, she claimed that she had been being quiet because she didn't want them to think something terrible had happened. In the words of Alan Jackson himself, something terrible did happen, right? Like your friend, your best friend, the guy, the one that you loved outside on the lawn, you know, the one that never went in the house. This is extremely important because I think she caught wind that they were trying to prove that she had gone in there hysterical, trying to wake them up and notify them of what was going on, and Chloe did not bark. As a matter of fact, nobody's seen the dog anywhere that morning, that day, or ever again, because they rehomed her to Paris, allegedly. Now, Carrie Roberts was called to the stand, and this time she was cross-examined, which she wasn't in the first trial. This is huge because Carrie Roberts admitted on stand that her testimony with the grand jury and in the first trial was influenced by Jen McCabe. She also admitted that not only did she not tell Jen to Google how long to die in the cold and hypothermia like she claims, but she didn't hear anybody tell her or ask her to do that. Not even Karen Reed, which she had said that she heard Karen Reed previously. So why are your stories changing? Is it because Carrie's actually an outsider that Jen was reeling in and maybe now she's realizing she doesn't want to be involved in any of this? Remember, Jen made that damning Google search at 2:27 a.m. of Haas long to die in the cold. A timestamp that nobody seems to be able to explain away with any sort of actual proof or evidence. But remember, this was also followed by butt dials back and forth between Higgins and Albert and a whole butt conversation. I don't know if you guys remember in the first trial that Brian Higgins testified that he had gone to Canton Police Department after everything had happened, after drinking, so admitting to drinking and driving, claiming that he was moving vehicles, and he claimed that he never went inside, specifically to a certain area that he was being grilled on by the defense. Well, we got that surveillance footage this time, and not only was he not moving cars, he absolutely went inside the building. Not only that, in this picture, if you zoom in real close, you can see that his hands seem swollen. Why is that? And you can also see that he had been making phone calls when he claimed that he had been being butt dialed or butt dialing back and forth, butt conversation, whatever the hell it was. You can clearly see that that's a lie and he was on the phone. And remember, he claimed that he was already at home eating by this time and watching TV or something. He's a liar. Whiffen was actually called out for cherry-picking evidence from his own report to directly benefit the state and make Karen Reed look bad. But Alessi had his report, and he found some interesting things in there. Number one, he had no real explanation for the 2:27 a.m. timestamp. He couldn't explain it away. Number two, he admitted that John's phone was in a specific radius that could have been inside the home at that time. However, Alessi also pointed out a diagram which included a radius of where John O'Keefe's cell phone could have been located at the specific time. The phone was traveling at a distance towards the home, in Whiffen's own words, and then was followed by a period of low accuracy. In Whiffen's own report, he had stated that the low location accuracy could have been from entering a covered area, such as a house, or a building. The phone then went up and down flights of stairs. We already know this, but what we also know is that John O'Keefe had actually been using his phone, unlocking it with his own face, and they could prove that he actually was clicking that button. Now, when Ian Whiffen was asked if anybody else was registered as a user on John O'Keefe's cell phone, he said he didn't even bother to check. So who was unlocking O'Keefe's phone with his own face? Who was reading text messages? Who was locking the phone by pressing that button at the side, you know, if you're an Apple user? How could all of this have been going on if Karen Read had allegedly hit him and left him for dead? His phone then centered on a location after its final movements within the radius closer to the home than the roadside. So you tell me how any of this makes sense. I've got a theory, but you'll have to stay until the end to hear it. Jessica Hyde was actually an extremely argumentative witness, and Alessi pointed out that she had been banned or limited from testifying in a previous trial due to her credibility. So not looking good. We got Burgess lying and getting destroyed on the stand. He doesn't have a degree, which is, you know, that's not a big deal, but it is when you're lying about it. Because then, what else are you lying about? If I'm a juror, how else can I believe what the hell you're saying? Your credibility automatically goes out the door. All experts also admitted, including the ones that assessed John's vehicle and his clothing, all the DNA experts testified that all of the evidence was given to them. So for example, they didn't go to the scene, they didn't get that evidence themselves. Where did they get it from? Proctor, the forensic data analysts. They did not extract that data. They were given that data. Probably is why they have no explanation for certain things. So the Commonwealth's theory has now changed. Of course, John's time of death has moved continuously, but now they're claiming that he died at 12:32. But Karen's phone connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at 12:36. I don't care what time she said in this interview or that interview. I don't care what time she actually entered the home and you can hear her heels clicking, which is actually, I think that benefits her that you can hear her heels clicking. Anyways, her phone connected to that Wi-Fi. So that means that she was pretty much at the house, whether she was pulling up, whether she was sitting in her car, whether she was in the garage before she actually started walking into the home. She was physically at that property by 12:36. So how is she able to hit and kill John O'Keefe and then zoom across in a snowstorm? Not to mention, we already know that the library video that was submitted would have showed her car going with her taillights still intact, traveling to John's home. That specific crucial time frame was missing. Like, guys, this is seriously, it's gonna be a movie. I can't even explain it. I can't. Buchanan testified again, and it was worse because I think that they were trying to use him as their lead investigator to avoid calling Proctor, because I don't believe that they are, which is insane to me. But Buchanan had to take all the licks for Proctor. The text messages were read of him looking for nudes on Karen Read's phone, and Buchanan was called out for saying that Proctor, the one who's now fired because of this case, handled this case, the one he got fired over, with integrity. I cannot believe it. And this is very important because they pulled behind Karen Read and they saw her in the vehicle. But what's more important is they did not see John O'Keefe. He wasn't inside the vehicle, he wasn't outside the vehicle. And according to everybody inside the Albert family home, he wasn't inside the house. But it gets crazier. Julie Nagel came outside to send her brother away because she wanted to stay all of a sudden. And as Ryan Nagel pulled away, he said he looked in the SUV and he saw Karen Read sitting there alone. He saw her sitting there alone. So where is John if not inside the home? Another important fact is this is exactly when Julie Nagel would have seen the tall, dark-haired man enter the home. Same as Brian Higgins. The timeline fits. Karen Read's story, it fits with the timeline. She was an angry girlfriend. She probably was bitter because she knew that the relationship was on the outs. Does that mean she murdered him? Absolutely not. And I believe those voicemails she laughed at were angry, prove that she thought her boyfriend was alive. She thought he was out there partying, he had ditched her. She drove away. not knowing he was laying there dying in the snow. You know, I think she even thought he was on his ex-girlfriend's couch at one point. She was very angry, and it does make her sound a little bit like a psycho, but a psycho who believed that her boyfriend was alive. Do I believe she questioned, yeah, you know, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Probably after McCabe started pointing out her cracked taillight, which we know what happens with the taillight because we see her pulling out of her driveway hysterically, cracking it on John O'Keefe's car hours after he had already died. His injuries don't match. We're going to hear from ARCA again. They testified in the first trial, and they're going to be grilled because they changed their phone numbers. But you know what? Their families were getting death threats. They were getting harassed, and they're still coming back to testify. That, to me, tells me that they truly do believe she's innocent. They said it. You can't deny the physics, and John O'Keefe was not hit by that car. His injuries don't match up, and the cars... not injuries, but the damage to the car does not match up. They're going to have the plow driver testify, the one that plowed the road, that some people are questioning his credibility because he was off a little bit on the timeline. But the bottom line is he drove down that street several times to plow after Karen Read had already hit John O'Keefe, and he did not see a body. You know, it's a giant ass plow with huge lights. He's admitted that he has to be very, very careful. He's looking around. He's making sure there's no humans, there's no kids, there's no animals. He would have saw a body on the snow. When it snows out, man, you can see everything. Like, I just don't buy it. We've got the text messages from Jen McCabe frantically wondering where John O'Keefe is. Brian Higgins was asking, are you coming here? And then the suspicious phone calls. She called him 7 times over and over again, back to back. She claimed all of those were butt dials, but then why were no voicemails left? Why was it hung up right before voicemail engaged, huh? Brennan is not calling the lead investigator, which the defense, I believe, will, and it's going to make him look worse. They're going to chew him up on that stand, and they really are not going to call Higgins and Albert. Well, I really hope that the defense does, because I think the jury needs to hear about the destroyed cell phones and exactly how they were destroyed of. It's the lengths that we're going to for me. I don't think that they've proven anything beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't even think that they've proven that John O'Keefe's death was not an accident. I mean, you had the brain surgeon get up there and say, yeah, I've seen slip and falls all the time in bad weather when people are drinking. Whoops. And I truly do believe that 2:27 a.m. search happened at 2:27 a.m. I do believe that she tried to cover her tracks in the morning when she realized, whoopsie doodle, and well, let's just say I did it at this time and we'll make some shit up. But I believe that happened, especially when you stack up all the other weird stuff that's going around at that time. And I believe that the prosecution is actually going to be concluding their case on Tuesday, and the defense is going to come out swinging. That's my personal opinion. And I think that they're going to have a lot more ammunition this time. Number one, they've had time to look into certain things. And number two, the FBI investigation is now closed, which you can look it up online and they'll tell you John wasn't hit by a car. But anywho, they have all of that stuff that they can now use, which they couldn't in the first trial. So I don't know how anybody can look at this case, especially 12 people, and convict beyond a reasonable doubt. This case is filled with reasonable doubt. And this is coming from somebody who truly thought going into this, when I watched the very first day of trial, I thought there was a good chance she did it. And I thought, well, you know what? That search probably didn't happen at 2:27 a.m. But if they can prove that it did, then maybe I'll reconsider. And boy, was I in for a surprise. Not this, the 2:27 a.m. search is not even the most damning part. And I truly believe with all the surveillance footage these days, I mean, 2022 wasn't that long ago, block full of cops, beautiful homes, and you're telling me none of them had surveillance footage that night? I think that if she hit them, they would have video footage of it. I truly, truly do. So as I said, here's my theory. I believe that they went to the home. Karen Read had maybe a bit of a bad feeling. She didn't want to keep drinking. She wanted to go home. John said he was going to go inside, feel it out exactly like she said. And I think something happened. I think he went to the basement, and it's possible people didn't know. Maybe Jen at first didn't know that he was there, which is why she continued to be like, are you coming here? pull behind me. But I think something happened in that basement. Do I think that they meant to kill him? No. But I think a struggle broke out, and I think the dog got involved, because if y'all own animals, especially dogs, they're going to protect you. You know, if there's a struggle, they're going to jump up. Those are claw marks, and the defense has experts. They did last time. They're going to this time real experts, doctors who have worked in emergency rooms, former cops, you know, dog bite experts that are going to tell you that these are from a large animal, most likely a large dog. I think he fell backwards, cracked his head open, and I believe that that's what happened. And then I think that's where the struggle ended and they all panicked. I think that Jen McCabe's multiple phone calls were them looking for his phone. I believe that he probably lost it in the struggle, and they thought, well, if his phone's in here, they're going to know he wasn't here. So they called it looking for it. Have you guys ever lost a phone and called it looking for it? It makes more sense. And then she brought it up the stairs, and how did it end up right under his body? Like, really, guys? Also, why was he found on his front instead of his back? If he allegedly would have been incapacitated at that time. There's just so many questions that I have. But that's my belief on what happened. That's truly what I think. I mean, the Alberts had gotten rid of their home, their dog. They ripped up their floor, which is where I think all of the blood was, because there wasn't that much at the scene. But John O'Keefe's gaping head wound, as well as he was missing a lot of blood in his body. They tore up that floor and they got rid of it and redid it, which is hilarious. They spent thousands of dollars to do that, which wouldn't be sketchy, despite the fact that they had done it not long before. So the basement floor had just been redone, and then they redo it again. Weird. And then sell their home. Weird. Where are they? I heard rumors that Brian Albert just disappeared, fell off the face of the earth. Maybe that's why he's not testifying. But you guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. You know, I always love to hear everything you have to say. Do you guys believe that Karen Read is innocent, or do you think that she truly did hit John? I don't see it. I mean, you let me know how you got there. But until next time, I'm gonna be back here to talk about this case, especially when the defense goes in. And I would love it if you guys would join me. So hit that notification bell if you do enjoy this type of content. And if you did like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, as it's a free way to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for clicking on this video today. I hope you guys take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in my next video.